So I'm pleased to introduce our afternoon spotlight on energy metals, and to start the session, please help me welcome Giyani Metals, a mineral resource company focused on becoming one of Africa's first low-carbon producers of high-purity manganese sulphate precursor materials, sourced directly from manganese oxide ore, which in turn is used by battery manufacturers for the expanding EV market. Here to tell you more about this exciting future development is Eugene Lee, Senior VP and CFO. Eugene?
Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. I brought notes. I don't typically do these presentations. We usually leave it to our CEO and our VP Corp Dev. So welcome, everyone. My name is Eugene Lee. I'm the CFO of Giyani Metals Corporation. A little bit of my background. I'm a chartered accountant, articled at PwC, spent some time in audit and in turnaround situations for their insolvency group. I was the VP Finance of Northgate Minerals, which was acquired by Orico Gold, which had the Young-Davidson gold mine in Matachewan and the Fosterville gold mine in Australia. And then I quickly transitioned into a private royalty company called Premier Royalty, which was acquired by Sandstorm Gold before I left for Hudbay Minerals, where I was head of commercial and market development. Typical standard cautionary note. So what's the opportunity? Joanne did a great job of introducing Giyani Metals and what we're looking to do. We want to be a premium, sustainable supplier of battery materials. We're developing our K.HILL high-grade, high-purity manganese sulphate monohydrate, or HPMSM, project in Botswana. It's one of the critical elements that is required for the NMC cathode in lithium-ion batteries of electric vehicles. Currently, over 90% of HPMSM is produced in China, and we'll be one of the first producers outside of China to be able to produce this for the growing EV market. We're located in Botswana, which is a Tier 1 mining jurisdiction. It's the longest-serving democracy in Africa, and the Fraser Institute ranked it the most attractive mining jurisdiction in all of Africa. Our project fundamentals are incredibly strong. Our April 2021 PEA indicated an IRR of 80% based on startup capex of $160 million Canadian and an MPV of $440 million. We are updating our PEA to a feasibility study, which will be released later this year in Q3 of 2022. And ESG is at the core of everything that we do. It's in all of our project design and even affects our day-to-day and choices that we make in terms of whether we take an UberX or whether we use a green Uber. We do that in the little decisions so that when we make the big decisions, it comes second nature to us. So we're integrating renewable energy into our project and integrating solar power into our power mix. So what is manganese and why does it matter for EVs and the battery revolution? So the majority of lithium-ion batteries that are in vehicles come with an NMC cathode. That stands for nickel, manganese, cobalt. Most of you have probably heard of lithium in the discussion of EVs and batteries. You've probably heard of nickel sulphate and cobalt sulphate and talked about the price volatility and sustainability issues. But manganese, for some reason, seems to be the forgotten metal that no one seems to be talking about. But that's changing, and that's changed dramatically in the last couple months as people recognize that there are sustainability issues with respect to pricing and sourcing of this material from countries like China or the DRC from cobalt. The graphs that we have on the bottom of the slide shows the growth of battery capacity and the manganese content that's expected to increase with the growth of batteries in EVs. And the graph on the right is a forecast of what the HPMSM global supply and deficit and demand curve looks like. And what they're forecasting right now is close to 1 million tons of manganese metal contained deficit by the year 2035. So where is this coming from? We plan to be one of those that fill that gap. So why else does manganese matter? So currently, over 90% of the manganese sulphate that's used in the cathodes of electric vehicle batteries is produced in China. So being in Botswana provides OEMs that are looking for ESG transparency in their supply chain with what they require. We all know that with regulations changing, OEMs will have to be a lot more transparent and will have to provide disclosure in terms of their entire supply chain. And being a Canadian company listed on a Canadian exchange, producing this material directly with its own ore will be able to provide that transparency that OEMs are looking for. ESG. We are committed to ESG and sustainability. Not only is it the smart thing to do these days, it's the right thing to do. And how real is it? We actually received in the last 2 weeks a notice from one of our large institutional shareholders who indicated that they wanted to understand and be educated on what Giyani's ESG platform looked like. They indicated that if our ESG platform did not meet their requirements, they would be forced to sell our holdings. So that's how real it's become. And it's something that we've been designing from the very get-go, so we are in good position to be able to provide the responses that they're looking for. We plan to be a very low-carbon producer. Our production is going to be unique in that we'll be able to take the material, the ore directly, and produce the salt, the HPMSM, directly from the ore by leaching. It won't require the typical Chinese production methodology, which is to first produce it into a high-purity metal, and then to dissolve that or refine it further into the salt. So our process will have a lower carbon footprint, and it'll also be lower in cost than the Chinese producers. And we've engaged a group called Minviro, which many people seem to be using for an initial life cycle carbon assessment. And they've indicated that our production is about 4 to 5 times lower than what the average Chinese production looks like. Our leadership team. So I'm the CFO of the company. I was on the board of the company for 6 years before I stepped down to join the executive. We started off with 3 employees in the company at the beginning of 2021, and we've now grown to 11. And we were able to do that with the financing that we raised in 2021. Our CEO, we are led by Robin Burchill, who is ex-Canaccord, ex-BMO, and together with Dirk Hartman, our COO, they took the Silver Bear mine from development, permitting, financing, construction, and operation. So we do have history of bringing a project into fruition and to operating projects as well. And just at the bottom, we've listed some of the companies and organizations that we've been involved with throughout the years. So whether it's meeting with community groups in Botswana, whether it's hosting Verkor, the French battery maker, for a site due diligence visit last month, or whether it's spending time with geology students at the University of Botswana and providing lectures and information and real on-the-ground information, we want to spend and we invest a lot of time in country. The photograph on the right was taken after a closed-door private meeting with the president of Botswana, where he invited delegates of Botswana delegates at Indaba 2022 to a closed-door meeting. The gentleman on the right is Tuso Dikaka, who is the chair of our local subsidiary board and who recently was elected to the parent company board. When Tuso rose to speak, the president of Botswana introduced him to his peer group, which included executives from Lucara, from De Beers, Botswana, as well as Sandfire. The lady in the center is Elisa Davis. She's our new country manager, and she joined us from Botswana's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which oversees and holds and manages Botswana's mining and mineral investments. So why is Botswana important, and what makes our assets attractive? We have 3 projects in Botswana. There's the K.HILL mine, which is the project that we are completing our feasibility study on. There's Otse and there's Lobotse, both of which are 50 kilometers away from our proposed processing plant. Botswana, I've already mentioned, is a very attractive jurisdiction in Africa for a number of reasons. It's relatively easy to permit in Botswana because they have a long history of mining. They've made their public-private partnership with Botswana, which is the joint venture between the government of Botswana and De Beers, work for decades. They've got power, they've got water, they have the infrastructure in place. And one of the things that we do, the very first time I went to Botswana, it's a little gimmicky, but Robin, our CEO, ordered KFC for our delegation, which included members of the government. And I asked him, why would you order KFC when we're hosting members of the government at our site? And he said, listen, it's a supply chain issue. He wanted investors who had also come to visit the site at the same time to see that supply chain in Botswana is fantastic, that we could be in a southern African country at our mine site and be able to order KFC, a global brand, and have it delivered hot to our mine site. We've got power very close to K.HILL, and the image on the very bottom right is a newly paved tar road in Botswana near Otse. So it is very much different than some of the stereotypical issues that you might think of Southern Africa, and certainly some of the issues that we see around power with Eskom in South Africa. We don't have blackouts, we don't have issues like that. We've had very good success with the drill bit. So in the graph on the bottom shows the growth of our K.HILL project resource from April 2020 to February 2022. We went from 1.3 million tons of inferred resources to now 5.2 million tons of resource, which includes 2.1 million tons of indicated at a grade of 19.3% manganese oxide and 3.1 million tons of inferred at 16.9% manganese oxide. We are developing the K.HILL extension, which is a southerly extension which remains open to the south, and that will provide additional prospectivity for K.HILL alone, in addition to Otse and Lobatse that we have. Now the secret sauce for what it is that we're doing. So we're a mining company, but in reality, we're more of a specialty chemicals company. What we're trying to produce is a high purity, high grade chemical product that meets the specifications, the very rigorous specifications of the battery manufacturers. So we've designed our flow sheet. This is a cartoon of it, which simplifies things, but if you look at it, a lot of it will be familiar to most of you. The front end of it is typical of any gold operation. It's got mining, crushing, grinding, and leaching. The middle part will have base metal precipitation, iron and aluminum precipitation. The part that might be more unique to people in this room would be the polishing and the crystallization of the product to produce the final product. But it's not a new technology. Crystallization has been around for 3/4 of a century. If you're familiar with agriculture and fertilizer, it's something that's used in those industries quite regularly, and it's normal course. But to de-risk the process plant, we are building a demonstration plant. That will be built in South Africa. We're in the final stages of finalizing the contract, and construction will commence later or early in Q3 of this year. And the purpose of the demonstration plant is threefold. One is to prove that we can produce the quality that we need and to show that the process flow sheet works at scale. Two is to provide the samples that the off-takers or potential off-takers will need to qualify the product. And three is to provide a training tool for operational staff that we're building and developing in Botswana. So this is a list of some of the companies and organizations that we've been in touch with. The battery market seems to be growing every day. We've had varying levels of discussions with all of the entities that are noted here. What's been interesting for Giyani specifically is that up until the end of 2021, it was a challenge making connections or making contact with some people at these organizations. Something's changed in the last 6 months. I suspect it's the growing awareness of how important manganese is in the market. What's happened is that we've now had potential customers, off-takers, reach out to us, asking us for an update on the project, where we're at, when we're going to be in production, how are we financing this, and what stage we're at. So things have changed, and we're in a good position with all of these PCAM battery producers and OEMs. So some of the catalysts that we have in our stock. On the left, we just listed out some of our achievements over the years. And on the right are some of the near-term catalysts. The closest catalyst will be the finalization of our feasibility study, which is expected to be published in Q3. Certainly, things have changed from 2021 when we issued the feasibility study. We've all seen cost creep in everything, whether it's our fuel, whether it's the head of lettuce that we're buying at the grocery store, whether it's transportation, everything has increased. So we're expecting some cost escalation, but we're also seeing a big increase in the selling price of this material. In our PEA, we used a fairly conservative price of $15.88 a ton for HPMSM. We know that it's selling for much more. The spot market in Europe and in the US is even higher than that. what we've heard and what we understand is that it's between $2,500 to $3,000 a ton spot market in Europe and even higher in the US right now. In addition, I talked about the demonstration plant. We'll be signing the contract for the construction of the demo plant very soon, and then we'll start construction of the demo plant in South Africa shortly thereafter. We'll do an upgrade of the K.HILL resource. We want to upgrade the 3.1 million tons of inferred that we have at K.HILL into indicated category. And at Otse, I didn't talk very much about Otse, but we have, Otse is about 50 kilometers away. We've done some drilling and we've had some very attractive drill results, which we press released about 3 weeks ago. And we have a number of drill holes that have grades in excess of 30% manganese oxide over widths of 10 meters. So we're very keen to get a maiden resource for Otse out to the market later this year. And we want to be able to complete our ESIA, which will allow us to apply for a mining license by the end of this year. So these are all the near-term catalysts that we have in the next 6.5 months. Talking a little bit of our share structure and our share structure. Our ticker symbol is EMM. Our share price is about 37.5 cents today, and we have about 208 million shares outstanding, which gives us a market cap of about $80 million. Our largest shareholders are noted on the right there. RAB Capital is our largest shareholder. They own about 9%. RAB is based out of the UK. The group of directors and management own 3% of the company. And the rest of our, pardon me, the other institutional shareholders are all small, mid-cap funds and investment companies you'd be familiar with. Primevest Capital, Century, Ausbil. Charleston is supposed to be here from New York, and they're a significant shareholder, including Pathfinder and Ixios, that round up our top 10. I'll point out we do have 44 million warrants outstanding. 19 of those expire this Thursday. The strike price on those is 35 cents. We're trading at about 37, 38 cents. We would like them to be exercised, and some of the institutionals that we talked to last week indicated that they would. It'll bring extra capital into the treasury on top of the $16.5 million we're currently sitting on. But if they don't, we expect that they'll remove that overhang or that drag on the share price that we've seen for some time now. That concludes my presentation. Thanks for your attention. I'm going to be around for the next couple of days, happy to answer questions here, or happy to answer questions or arrange a one-on-one meeting with any of you. Thank you.